Where are we at, 3 weeks in?
I think Putin, obviously, Plan A didn't work. Plan B is progressing, and I mean the nature of combat is that you have a plan, but the enemy has a plan, and then you fight it out. He's now surrounded Mariupol, and he's got that under siege. He's captured pretty much Kherson. He's got operations going on around Kharkiv, and obviously is trying to encircle Kyiv. I think.
Why would you go to Mariupol, take over a hospital, and hold people hostage in there? I mean, that just sounds to me like trouble. As a military man, would you not say, why am I nursemaiding a lot of people in hospital? You wouldn't really want it as a target, would you?
I don't think he's looking at it like that. You know, this is about maps, about control,
territory,
about tying up Ukrainian forces and then releasing your own forces. So if you can get Mariupol to fold,
right,
then he gets a bunch more forces who've actually won something and therefore their morale's quite high, who he can then throw into the battle for Kyiv. And I think that's what he's going to be doing for most of this week, is trying to amass sufficient force to then fight what will be the crucial battle of this war, which is the Battle of Kyiv.
And I want to come on to Kyiv in a minute, but just staying with Mariupol, I mean, how surprised are you, given how we've been hearing for day after day about how apocalyptic the conditions are, seeing pregnant women giving birth and then dying, hospitals being bombarded, people being cut off, electricity, no water, that it hasn't fallen? Extraordinary.
Well, President Putin comes to St. Petersburg, or Leningrad as it was. The Second World War, the siege of Leningrad lasted 881 days. And the bad news for the people in Mariupol is, you know, if you like, that's the standard you've got to get to, because if you can do that and hang on in there somehow, then Putin can't have Kyiv, and then the negotiation takes that, you know, will be a better position for Ukraine. No, being besieged has never been fun from whenever siege warfare was invented by probably the Sumerians in 2000 BC.
Which brings us to the negotiating table, doesn't it? And, you know, what's on offer? Zelenskyy now saying, OK, the NATO think we can make it go away. Russia, though, will say, right, well, we don't want any weapons, we don't want any nuclear proliferation in your country and whatever. What's the give and take? What do you think's achievable?
I think we're not quite at the stage where anyone wants to sit down yet. You know, there's lots of ifs and buts and unfinished business, but for sure, Ukraine being in NATO was always a red line for Putin, and we've seen how strongly he felt about that. All that means is Ukraine would become a neutral nation like Switzerland and Sweden. Switzerland and Sweden both have armed forces that are pretty chunky because they have to, because they can't rely on anyone else. I think for the Ukrainians, it wouldn't mean very much difference at all. The only thing is that they wouldn't be obviously have the support of NATO under an Article 5 agreement, but I suspect NATO will be looking at talk about how it will defend or how it will react should this happen again. I mean, if there is an outbreak of democracy in Belarus, following whatever the fallout from this is, you know, your man in Belarus isn't going to exactly be the most popular guy on the block. This could play out again and again and again, and I think that's what NATO will be looking at. And, you know, its red line is a hostile act against a NATO nation, but that might not quite be enough to deter the sort of things we're seeing.
Right, let's talk